Welcome to the Irish NFL show in association with QuinnBet. Good evening if you're tuning in to the live stream, and it's great to have you as always. And thanks to all of you also listening back to us on podcast after the fact. You can check out our preview podcast of the Thursday night football game between the Packers and the Commanders, where we discuss that matchup and give our picks for that TNF game that's kicking off in just a few hours' time as we are recording. Kieran O'Donovan and Brian O'Leary put that together. Pick that up wherever you get your podcasts. We'll take care of the other 15 games right here. Kieran Boyle, Brian O'Leary and Shane Brennan here with me, Conor Brophy, for our Week 2 preview show. And we start off with, and sorry lads, but what's already looking like the basement battle in the NFC East. Third place to prize here between the Giants and the Cowboys. Kieran.
May as well get out of the way now, huh? Well, Dallas are 7-1 at home against the Giants when Dak Prescott plays. They've won 15 of the last 16 meetings. Giants scored 6 points last week. Dallas scored 20 and almost beat the Eagles. I'm really concerned for this Giants team. They didn't show me anything last week. I think a real standout of the game last week was the 1st and goal on the 1 yard line, and they ended up with a field goal. I mean, that's a hard thing to do in the NFL, to go from the 1st and goal on the 1 yard to end up with a field goal. So I'm really nervous about this matchup. We never do well against the Cowboys. The Giants can't score. That's the problem right now. They can't put any kind of offense together. I just saw that Andrew Thomas is still not practicing. It's Thursday. We're another day closer to game time. That O-line is paper thin. Even with him in there, it's fragile. And then I'm hearing, if it's a 20-6 or a 17-3 scoreline at the half, they're just going to chuck dart in and try and save lives and try and scoop water out of the sinking boat. It's all signs point to 0-2 for the Giants. Nothing's working. The offense is not working. Wilson scrambled a lot, and he's not 26 anymore. It's real bleak in Giants world. I can't see a situation where the Giants go into Dallas and give them any kind of a fight. I mean, they might keep it fairly tight in the first half, but I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have too much power out there, and I don't think the Giants have any kind of, I say it all the time, muscle memory to try and stay in the fight. It's been years since they've been competitive, and I don't see anything changing in this game, unfortunately.
Brian, Kieran makes it sound more like the Giants are going to visit Arlington Cemetery than Arlington, Texas. Do you have any more optimism?
I do, Conor. Funny enough, I absolutely do. I would caution the doom and gloom to a certain extent. Yeah, I'll put it out there immediately. I am selecting the Cowboys to win the game, but I don't think it's going to be a comprehensive victory. I think there's a few elements to my rationale. Like we've seen many a time in the NFL, Conor, 1 week, they call this a week-to-week league at times, and in particular when it starts the season, week 1, week 2, very quickly see a different team come out. I would imagine the week that they've had and the turmoil, there has to be some togetherness. If there's no togetherness in this team in week 2, I'm not saying they come out and they find a way to victory, but if they don't come out and show fight as a team as a whole, I think essentially Brian David is probably done and might be one of the first head coaches to go, which I never really believed. I never bought into the QuinnBet pricing that he would have been the second or third favorite, because everything seems to be on the upper trajectory if you listen to all the stuff in the camps. But
can I ask you on that point, Brian, while you bring it up, why then isn't he rolling the dice and throwing Jackson Dart out there right from the get-go? Why is he keeping Abdul Carter on the snap count? He's trying to save his job.
And this is what is confusing. I get the quarterback one. I actually do. I get it. And look, teams have a different strategy. Some teams throw the quarterback in. Like you have people last year saying, but sure, look, you date back to 2 years ago. Oh, but sure, the Texans threw in CJ Stroud. Like, he was up against Davis Mills, with all due respect. Jaden Daniels last year. Oh, they threw Jaden Daniels in. He was up against Mariota. Sorry, Conor, I can't even remember who the Bears' backup was when Caden Williams went in to win the job. Oh, I can't recall. You can tell me. You're probably better in position to tell me than who it was. But the point is, those teams were ready-made in terms of a quarterback was ready to come in. The Giants felt that they could go in a different position, which is essentially, for me, the Kurt Warner role model back in the day with the Giants. Play for six to 7 games, try getting themselves in a position, and maybe then they transition into a new quarterback. I don't think do Jackson Dart any favours to be putting him in on Sunday, even if they are down by two scores. I get what Kieran's saying. It's been suggested all week the Giants will just throw him in. I think people are suggesting, week 3 against the Chiefs is a bad time. I don't think that's a bad time. I think it's a standalone game on Sunday night football. Chiefs don't seem like they're the team they were, maybe that's the right time to put him in. But I do think you'll get a reaction this weekend. I think defensively they might play better to keep this Cowboys offense in check for parts of the game, because it wasn't as the Cowboys surprised everybody last weekend. But I'm wondering about the element of surprise was down to the fact that the Carter was taking out a game very quickly for the Eagles, and they found ways to navigate a victory. To navigate a very just good display offensively, but it came down to the end. They couldn't make the plays. I'm getting away from the point. I think the Cowboys will win. I think it'll be a tighter game than people suggest. I think it will come down to a play in the fourth quarter here and there, and ultimately I think the Cowboys come out the right side of it. Interesting one in the last 10 minutes since we started. Gibson, who was released by the Jets, has been picked up by the Giants. Very interesting one. He'll probably get a shot in the arm, maybe a shot in the arm for the Giants, or maybe he'd be shot out in New York completely in the next 2 weeks. But one or the other, right? Cowboys for me, and not as comprehensive as people may think.
Shane, call it.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, how about them indeed? I'm going to double down on the gambler and his team and go Cowboys too. Shane, stay with us on Seahawks Steelers next up. Steelers' first home game after their trip to MetLife, where they took down the Jets in a shootout last week. An exciting game that was.
Yeah, very much so. And I find interesting about this one is, like, I think a lot of times when we talk about the Seahawks and Steelers, we talk about two teams that might be relying on their defense to find ways to win. But the Steelers last week proved themselves to be able to put it up in an offensive battle in a way that we haven't necessarily seen happen so far this year. That's what I found really interesting, that when people are taking a seat back and looking at this game, a lot of people are backing the Seahawks, and I'm just not quite sure why. DK Metcalf isn't on the Seahawks anymore. He's on the Steelers now. We got 83 yards against the Jets last week. We're expecting good production from him. Jalen Ramsey as cornerback, I think, will be crucial in slowing down Smith and Jigba. Smith and Jigba had 124 of Seattle's 150 receiving yards last week, excuse me. Like, if you get a good corner to lock him down, or at least sort of make him slightly less productive, I think that blunts Seattle's offense quite a bit. And they're trying to find their feet, I think, more than we expected. Last week against the 49ers, they just were not good offensively. The 49ers kind of kept Seattle in the game by making key mistakes and missing kicks and a few bits like that. Versus Aaron Rodgers, who's coming in slinging the ball, and I think this is his home opener. He will come into this with a bit less emotion behind him than he was the Jets. Now, emotion tends to be a driver for Aaron Rodgers, so I don't know. I imagine the emotion of being at home in front of Pittsburgh fans might drive him a bit here, but I don't know. I think that Pittsburgh have the ability to score points more than Seattle does. So I have a feeling that the Steelers might win this by more than a touchdown. That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I'd be kind of pretty much in line with what you're saying there, Shane, myself. I'm always wary after week one in general. I think in some ways picking week two games is even more difficult, because week one you kind of tend to throw out the window in some sense. You're kind of looking at teams and you're going, well, based on what I know, this is what I expect. In week two, you can kind of be fooled by what you've seen in week one, and it's such a ridiculously small sample, the smallest sample possible. You can go in the wrong way, and I'm always wary about a team having a big come down game if they've had a big week one win. Steelers, not quite in that category for me, because while they did win, and it was an exciting game, as we said, against the Jets, and probably didn't go the way we thought it would. Two teams that you thought might be leaning a little bit more on their defense end up both of them slinging the ball. Justin Fields looking really good for the Jets, and Rodgers really good for the Steelers. 244 yards, 136.7 rating, 4 TDs for him last week. He did get hit a couple of times, though, which is a slight concern for me, particularly given his age. 4 sacks, one of them in particular, Quincy Williams, absolutely emptied him out. And you were worried looking at him going, oh, is he going to get back up? As a Steelers fan, that's not a side I want to be seeing too often this season, never mind 4 times in a game. So they're going to need to do better there. In the running game on both sides, I think it's kind of interesting. We talked, I remember Kieran Boyle saying this about how Walker and Charbonnet just need to get it going for the Seahawks. They couldn't really get much in the running game at all against San Francisco, and that is a big concern for me. Steelers, I won't quite say they were gashed against the Jets, but they had real trouble containing Breece Hall, who went, I think, 19 for 107 yards at an average of over 5.5 a carry. That's something that they don't need Seattle moving the ball on the ground, protecting Sam Darnold, as you say, Shane, from having to throw too early and too often. He only did put up 150 yards in the end, and that wasn't anywhere near enough to get them where they needed to be against San Francisco. I would think that the Steelers' defense is going to be better this week than they were last week, and I certainly expect them to play better over the course of the season than they were able to show in MetLife. You combine that with where their offense is, I like what's happening there. It's a revenge game for DK Metcalf too, who was Rodgers' #1 target last week against San Francisco. It's Steelers all the way for me, and I think it could be a two-possession victory or more at the end of that one. I'm along very similar lines to yourself there, Kieran.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks actually in this one. I think they're going to come on the road and do a little number. I think they're going to start getting rolling with that running game and with Smith and Jigba. I don't think Rodgers is going to put 4 touchdowns up again this week. I think it's going to kind of revert back to the mean, as it were. So I actually like the Seahawks with a road win in this one.
Brian?
Metcalf breakout game. 4 receptions for 83 yards last week. I think he goes over 100 and he has a couple of touchdowns and he gets a little bit of revenge on his old team. So Steelers for me.
Right, to Tennessee we go, Kieran, for Rams-Titans. It's Cam Ward's first game, #1 overall pick. A bit of a baptism of fire for him last week in Mile High. Not an easy place to go against one of the best defenses in the league, and certainly it wasn't easy for him. 112 yards was all he could put up last week, sub-50 rating. That's been a little unfair to him. I don't think anybody would have expected him to go and light it up against that really strong Denver Broncos defense. Will it be better this week against the Rams?
Ooh, I'd like to say yes, because I love Ward, but I mean he's going from the cauldron into the fire with this game. That was a real tough baptism for him last week. I mean, I loved him coming out of college, but my main concern was the weapons you had around him, and it kind of told last weekend. I mean, he struggled to get the ball moving. He was pressured on 53% of his dropbacks. So the O-line is already starting. They really haven't got it together yet either. And the penalties, I mean, Tennessee had a league high 13 penalties for 131 yards. That's going to kill any momentum that's going as well. I love Ward as a player. I'm just really nervous about the surrounding cast that he has. And he's going, I know it's a home game and it's an opening home game and he'll get the energy and he'll feed off the buzz of the crowd. But I mean, you're going up against that Rams team. Tennessee has lost 7 straight games going back to last season. And the Rams, I mean, I think they haven't conceded more than 10 points in, I think, 5 of the last 7 games. That defense is just stout. And we saw Braden Fisk as an absolute wrecking ball last week. They've conceded less than 10 points in 5 of the last, like I said. The only thing is, I mean, there's minor little details. Stafford's never beaten the Titans, but that's not I'm not going to hang my hat on anything there. I think the Rams, with all the weapons they have, we saw what they did last week. Puka went off for 100+ yards, 130 yards. They put manners on that Houston team. And I just think that it's going to be really hard for Cam Ward to get anything going at all in this game. With Pollard, Calvin Ridley, I mean, Van Jefferson, is that really an offense that's going to struggle or that's going to really threaten a lot of defenses? I don't think so. I know it's an east-ish coast kind of game for the Rams. But I just see the Rams having too much in this game. I think Cam Ward is going to start getting more and more, comfortable with that O-line. I talked about it a couple of months ago. It's a very similarly built to the one he had in college at Miami. A lot of big boys, 300+ pound guys there. They've kind of replicated that model. But it's going to take them a minute to start kind of gelling and keeping him upright because he had a real tough game last week. But saying that, the class of the Rams is gonna tell out in this one. It's probably going to be a 10 to 14 point win when all's said and done.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see how things get better that quickly for Cam Ward. I'd agree with you there. You look at, by contrast to what JJ McCarthy was doing last week, and not an easy one for him to start on a schedule, a division rivalry coming in for his very first game against the Bears team that was hyped up. But JJ McCarthy has Kevin O'Connell coaching him. JJ McCarthy has a really stout offensive line. He's got Justin Jefferson. He's got the tight end there, Hawkinson, and a bunch of other weapons. He's got his check down sorted, and he's got a good running back as well. 2 good running backs to carry the load from. Cam Ward has none of that. This is the more classic rookie situation where you're coming into a bad team and a lot of it is going to be on your shoulders. Not all of it though, because I think, let's shout out the Tennessee Titans defense last week. They lost pretty comprehensively on the scoreboard, but it wasn't for any lack of effort on part of that Tennessee D. 4 takeaways, let's not forget, made Bo Nix look quite ordinary at times. And they'll need to do an awful lot of the lifting here to try and keep the Rams contained. But bear in mind, Puka Nacua aside, they weren't exactly lights out last week, but as you've alluded to, Kieran, they're so good on the defensive side of the ball themselves. Like, didn't concede a touchdown last weekend against the Texans offense, which is not exactly one of the more easily contained in the league, notwithstanding the slight sputtering they've been seeing of late. that's a matchup that just points Rams all ends up for me. I can't see past them for this one. Brian?
Yeah, I think we're probably all going to be aligned on this one. I think similarity to last week. I think it's not the most enjoyable game in terms of it's a spectacle. I think it's the defense of the Rams that finds a way to get it done. I think right now we're seeing a stuttering offense with the Rams. It's very early in the season. I think they will get it to going over the course of the season. But for now, they rely on their defense to get them over the line. I think it'll be a low scoring affair. Rams come out on top and cover the spread, which I believe is 5.5 points with our partner QuinBet, which is a fair line. So Rams for me.
Shane, give us your pick.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to see Cam Ward and the Titans sort of get the ball rolling, I think the Rams are going to be too difficult. You have to remember Cam Ward took 6 sacks last week. Now that was against a good Denver D, but I can see the Rams causing a lot of trouble here. The Rams would really need to score 15 points and 11 enough to win this one, so I think they'll do it.
All right, we roll on to the to MetLife again, where the Jets are one of a couple of teams. The Saints, I think, the other ones who play a second straight home game this weekend. Brian, they host the Bills, which traditionally has not gone well for the Jets.
No, but they have played them quite tough at home in particular over the last few years. I mean, there was one game a couple of years ago that they actually found a way to win where they intercepted Josh Allen a number of times. There was the overtime game, week 1, where Aaron Rodgers went off injured, and they get the game itself seemed to be the forgotten factor after that, but they won that game in overtime. So they had an opportunity last year to put the game into overtime. They've always found a way to play tough and then don't play at all when they go up to Buffalo. The recipe for the Jets, for me, run the ball effectively, run the ball down the throat of this Bills defense. We saw last weekend, for all the joy and merits that they had afterwards in terms of coming back and achieving that great comeback, Connor, and winning the game late on. Their defense was hosed time and time again by Derrick Henry. Brees Hall isn't the same animal, but he had a really effective game last weekend. Like, he was blown out of a cannon in that first half. He had 107 yards. And like, there was question marks over whether the Jets would trade him going into the season. It looked like he went out there with a point to prove. I could see them putting it up to him. Let's see what Justin Fields can do this week. It's an interesting dynamic. Is it one game wonder that we saw last weekend? Or are we going to find that he just fits into this offense under Aaron Glenn and he puts it up against this Jets team? I think inevitably the Bills will, against the Bills, I think inevitably the Bills will come out on top. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're still here in the fourth quarter and the game is very much in the melting pot. I think the Bills are getting to that stage now where they find ways to get over the line even when they don't play particularly well. But when you've got a quarterback that throws for over 400 yards, Connor, and 4 touchdowns, he's going to be on the crest of a wave, and ultimately I think it continues. They find a way. But I think it'll be a high-scoring affair, and the Bills come out the right side.
Shane, a better start than we expected for the Jets, particularly offensively, and Fields looked right at home there. Engstrom, of course, who they brought across from Detroit as the offensive coordinator, as Kieran O'Donovan was saying in our recap show last week, kind of an intriguing mystique around him, and it certainly started off with arrows up on that side of the ball. Can they do enough to contain the Bills?
I think they could definitely do enough to make this a very interesting game. I think, alluding to what Brian was saying there, you look what the Ravens were able to do last week. They were able to run the running back, run the quarterback, keep things unpredictable. The Bills actually couldn't really deal with that very well. It was, again, by the sort of the grace of the football gods, or Josh Allen, as he's known to us mere mortals, that they managed to engineer way back into the game. The Jets will probably just try to end up doing some sort of Ravens tribute act against the Bills defense. And if you actually look at what the Jets were able to do offensively speaking last week, what they were able to do is plan to use the assets they have to the best of their ability. Brees Hall getting over 100 yards, Justin Fields getting 2 rushing touchdowns, but in the right situations, which we haven't seen from the Jets in so many key parts in recent years. Garrett Wilson being targeted 9 times, catching 7, going for 95 yards and a touchdown. That's a pretty high completion rate. Justin Fields has converted more than half of his third down conversions. There's a lot of good situational football, offensively speaking, from the Jets last week. The problem for them this week is they're facing as a Bills team who, again, have everything going for them in terms of their offensive capabilities. And I think this, I agree with Brian. I think this is a game which both teams can end scoring over 30 points. But in an offensive shootout, when you put up to Josh Allen, he always finds a way to come out of the bag. This is against a team that I think he knows well. This is against a defense that I don't think is fully equipped to really deal with all of the different aerial attacks that Buffalo has, because again, against what the Steelers last week didn't come at them with a run game, which I think is what they originally planned for defensively. They came at them through the air and they tore them apart again in those key situational moments. So I think this is going to be a weird one where the Jets end up 0-2, but despite the fact that they've probably scored over 60 points over the course of 2 games, and that's going to lead to questions for Aaron Glenn. But no, I agree with Brian in that this has the potential to be quite a high scoring game. But that Jets defense for me doesn't show to me that it can close out, that it can shut down Josh Allen. And then the more offenses, this is almost a quandary with playing against Josh Allen and the Bills. The more you put it up to them, the more Josh Allen finds a way to come back at you and finds different ways to win the game. And that's why I think the Bills will win this one here.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to need all of that much Josh Allen either. I think the Bills will win fairly comfortably here. Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets had 23 first downs, 394 yards, and they went 7 for 14 on third downs. They'll have to replicate that and then some if they're going to beat these Bills, but give me the Bills.
Jags visit the Bengals, Kieran, and Jags good start against, albeit a fairly insipid Panthers team. Bengals, on the other hand, got pretty lucky, and we were saying we need to see the Bengals make a strong start to the season. I mean, they got a win in the column in September, which is a strong start by their standards. But apart from that, it wasn't really very pretty, and they'll need to do an awful lot better if they're to make a home stand here.
Yeah, it was really ugly for the Bengals. But on the contrasting side, there's a huge amount of optimism in Duval this week, and a huge part of that was ETN going.
Only rookie head coach to win a game, Liam Cohn.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, I mean, here we go. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of optimism. You know, Trevor held the ball. He didn't do anything crazy with it. ETN went off for 143 yards, I believe it was, and that's what they're going to need from the running back. I mean, to the extent that they were able to trade Tank Bigsby to the Eagles this week. But yeah, there's a lot of optimism in Jags world. This team is starting to look like there could be something, you know, that this Baselli, Cohen, and Gladstone combo could be cooking something in Duval County. But the Bengals last week were horrendous. I mean, the Browns held the Bengals to 7 total yards in the second half. That's an incredible stat. And that was almost a reap for Burrow. You know, he was almost into his awful September territory. But he managed to pull one out. But it's a good matchup for me for the Jags. You know, I actually fancy them in this one. I think the weapons that they have right now and the way that they're feeling, and the Bengals, you know, there's that slow start, that slow kind of September slump that they have. But like I said, as ETN goes, this team goes too. They're going to need to bring a lot on the ground. Last year they didn't have him involved as much in the offense, and it really did suffer. So bring a lot of ETN on the ground. That's going to free up Hunter and BTJ out on the wide side. But Jags have scored. You know, they've scored the first touchdown in 5 of the last 6 games. They need to keep that momentum going. They need to keep Bengals on the back foot. And as well, BTJ's had a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games too, and they've got a kicker who can kick from 70 yards out, so they've always got a chance there. I think it's a great time for the Jags to take the Bengals. Weather shouldn't be a factor; it should be in the 70s. Should be a nice weather day for them, for the Jags to travel down to Ohio. And the fact that Cleveland outgained the Bengals 327 to 141 yards. And Cleveland actually had double the amount of first downs that the Bengals had. I think the Bengals are really struggling right now on what they're doing. So perfect time for Duval to head down there. And I actually like the Jags to win by 7.
Shane, for the Bengals, they have a chance to go 2-0. And considering that the Browns are also playing the Ravens, that could put them in a very good position. If the Browns did them a favor, they'd be in a hell of a better position than they were this time last year, when they'd already dropped their opener to the Pats and ended up going 0-2 before they got going at all.
That win last week, I think, was a key one for Cincinnati this year, because they played bad football but still managed to get a victory in September. We've seen so many Septembers that played bad football and still came out on the wrong side of those. Like, teams that win Super Bowls and teams that are put themselves in the conversations have to find ways to win when they're playing badly. So when they're coming into this game against the Jags, I completely see where Kieran is coming from. This is one of those ones where I was really on the fence. I thought about it a lot over the week as to what way I see this one happening, because the Jags, again, Trevor Lawrence, if he gets given good protection, I think he only got touched, like hit once by Carolina last week. He got better protection now. I don't think the Carolina defense was particularly strong. He gets given more room. I think he makes better plays. Travis, ETN, again, I think has the potential to be excellent. But I'm giving this one to the Bengals. I think because of what I saw last week, where even if they don't necessarily play good football, that they find ways to win situations and win games. Don't give away stupid penalties. Find ways to just get the third down when you need it. And the big thing for me is the fact that the Jaguars don't do quarterback pressure very well. They didn't really do that. Maybe didn't necessarily have to do that last week. Compared to what Joe Burrow had to face against Cleveland. And I think that if you give Burrow that extra half a second, I think his production rate and the production rate of his wide receivers can be a lot better, particularly as we get later into the second half. So for that reason, I'm giving this one to the Bengals, maybe by a field goal. I'm not really convinced by this one. I definitely see the Jags finding a way to win this one, but home field advantage for Cincinnati is probably going to be key, especially when, in those defensive plays, when the quarterback pressure is going to get on Trevor Lawrence more than he dealt with last week, and Joe Burrow is going to get more time in the pocket than he got last week as well. So that's the key difference for me.
Yeah, I thought the Jags looked good last week, but I wouldn't overvalue any win against the Panthers right now. It's Bengals for me, Brian.
Yeah, I'm with you, Connor. I think you spoke in the offseason about lopsided cap room maneuvering of players. It's all stacked to the offense. I think on Sunday, inevitably, they won't be able to keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase down for 2 games in a row. I think high scoring Bengals victory for me.
Well, we move to our second segment of picks now with the tasty AFC North clash between the Browns and the Ravens. The Ravens coming off that absolute stinger of a loss in an instant classic on the weekend just gone. Not a place the Ravens or the Browns rather, would want to be going, already nursing their own wounds after having dropped one to the Bengals last week that we just talked about. And it's looking on the cards that they're going to run into a buzzsaw. Having said that, the Bills showed last week yet again that while the Ravens can bully you, once you smack them in the face, they don't seem to know what to do.
No, yes, but look, this is a very different dynamic for a Browns team coming off a difficult loss last week. Like even before the season, you look at this game, week 2, going into Baltimore, their opening home game of the season. Yeah, no matter what the circumstances of that game against the Bills, obviously the fact that they came out the wrong side and the nature of the loss, they're going to be mulling over that over the course of the week. Joe Flacco had a great game in his own right last weekend, but the Bengals defense never really got to him. Like, we're going to see a different dynamic on Sunday. This Ravens defense in their own right is a really strong one. We speak how strong the secondary is. Are they going to get the openings to make plays and allow Joe Flacco to go up and down the field? You touched on the stats. They were so lopsided in their game last week, yet they lost. I just don't see a scenario where that can happen. I think it's the rocking chair game for me, Connor. I think we're going to be sitting here in third quarter. I think much bigger line this week, though. I think it's 11.5, 12.5 for QuinnBet. But I could see a 2-touchdown victory for the Ravens. I think they're going to come out and put a number down, put a marker down that, yeah, we've lost a difficult one to the Bills, but we're still challenging to be a team to take seriously over the course of the season. Bit lopsided victory for me, Ravens all day.
Yeah, I've been trying to see a path for the Browns, and I'm tempted to try and talk them up on the basis of what they were able to do in handling that Bengals offense, which, as we know, can be so explosive, although not typically in September. You want to put a little asterisk beside that one. 3 sacks on Burrow. Myles Garrett looked absolutely on fire, and he's started out like a man on a mission to win Defensive Player of the Year yet again. But you just look at what the Ravens are able to deploy on that side of the ball. And yeah, we talk about the Ravens dropping 2-score leads, and we talk about the slight flaw that might be in the Ravens stars, when sometimes their big players let them down in clutch spots. But I don't think the Browns are good enough to expose that flaw. It's one thing for the Bills to do it. It's another thing entirely for a very poorly equipped Browns offense to try and take to task this Ravens defense. Flacco, as you say, Brian, had a really good game last week. 2 picks. And in fairness, Joe Flacco knows how to throw a pick at the best of times, but 2 of the most unlucky interceptions I've ever seen, both of them coming off his receiver's hands, much more down to the lack of pass catching efforts than that they were poor throws in either of those cases. Yeah, Ravens for me all day long. And as you say, Brian, the spread is quite a spicy one. But yeah, you'd have to suspect that the Ravens, or I certainly suspect the Ravens, like you do, are good for it. Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, the spread went from 10.5 to 12.5, and it's going to go to 14 probably by Sunday. So it's going to be the Ravens for me.
Shane?
Yeah, Ravens for me as well.
Shane, your Patriots travel to Miami, where the Dolphins are often good at this time of year, and the Patriots will have to face being on the wrong sideline in the sun. So I hope they have the factor 50 with them. Will they be able to stand the heat on the field?
It's a good point actually raised with the Heat, because I was looking at this matchup, and before the season I was very confident. I said, look, the Patriots have to find a way to win in Miami, because it's something that we just haven't done. The last time the Patriots won in Miami, Tom Brady was playing against Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2019. Tua is 7-0 against the New England Patriots in his career. And as you mentioned there, there's so many disadvantages that the Pats have come into this game. The heat obviously being a big factor at this time of year. I think it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit hotter. Standing there,
you're gonna need more than sun cream. You're gonna need the sun parasol on the sideline there. I highly recommend you get one of those nice UV blocking sun parasols. That is the way to go.
Yeah, you need the full shade. Really, just get the full. See if we can find a way to just extend the roof out a little bit more. I think it works out because of the way that the roof is built in that stadium in September. Especially, you have to remember that Miami wear white jerseys and the away teams wear dark jerseys. That it's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit hotter on the away sideline. It's ridiculous. And put on top of that as well, people may not have seen the Patriots defensive coordinator, Terrell Williams, has gone into hospital this week, so he hasn't been working with his squad. And supposedly the relationship between Drake May and Josh McDaniel isn't going so well so far, according to a report by the Boston Globe. So everything is there for the Patriots to fail this week. But, and this is the key thing, both of these teams need to win. There is a need to win now for Miami and for New England after both losing last week. The Patriots had a lot of mistakes, whereas the Dolphins just looked absolutely awful from every aspect. Who do you trust to dig deep and find something within themselves when they need to win, versus who do you think is more likely to collapse and start pointing fingers at each other and just go into a bit of a garbage dump when they need to win? And that's the difference between New England and Miami here. I think, unlike the Bills and the Jets elsewhere in the AFC East, which I think it could be a very high-scoring game, this has the potential to be quite a low-scoring game. As much as May had over 280 yards and, did have a couple of bad interceptions. There was his O-line didn't give him much help. Getting 14 points might be enough to beat Miami, even if it is in Miami, even if Tua has a good record against the Patriots. If Tyreek Hill is still there, Jalen Waddle is still there, all the pieces still there. But Devon Achane was their best offensive weapon last week. And they're coming up against a Patriots run defense, which is their strong point, as opposed to the pass defense. So even if there was some bad tackling from the Patriots side of things on some wide receivers, they're facing against a Miami team that had very similar problems, have very, very bad tackling, had bad coverage, had bad run defense. Made Mac Jones look like a superstar, or not Mac Jones, excuse me. Daniel Jones looked like a superstar out there last week. Now that's probably to Daniel Jones' credit into some part. So I don't know. I'm choosing to believe that the Dolphins have a greater capacity to collapse, and that the Patriots have a greater capacity to win a boring game. And that's how I see this one going.
Kieran, I'm looking at this one saying the Dolphins are the better team, better players all day long. But looking at Mike McDaniel, if ever a guy has just completely lost his mojo, looks like he's kind of lost the locker room, to put it mildly. I don't see this team playing for their coach.
No, not at all. And you can see it. You can see that the body language from the players. McDaniel has got that air that, yeah, I know I'm going to be fired, so I'm just going to, say some cryptic things at the podium and keep my quirky ways up. I mean, his quirky ways, his quirky act has kind of gone on probably about a season or two too long. I don't think
you see Rex Ryan just piling on. Like, Rex Ryan looks like he was waiting for that opportunity.
Yeah,
for the last nerd boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just mean.
He rode the crest of the wave of all the young, hip, cool coaches coming in like McVay and all those guys. So I think he's been found out. The players affect. He's got no effect on the players anymore. Like you said, Miami probably has the better players, but that's not a team that's together right now. You saw Tyreek, sulking and moaning on the bench last week. Nothing is going right for the Dolphins. It doesn't matter what, and the weather hasn't even got cold yet, and they're already cooked, in my opinion. It's going to be 100. The only probably difficult factor for the Patriots, and probably not, because half the players are probably from Florida anyway, but it'll feel like 103 in Miami on Sunday. So you can add another 20 degrees onto that on the other sideline. But, both teams coming off disappointing loss. But Miami only had 211 total yards on Sunday last week. That's pitiful with a team of the offensive caliber that they have. For me, the Patriots they're gonna win this game because they're gonna put together. They had 336 total yards, only 13 points, but I see them putting things together real quick. I see Drake May starting to, find Pop Douglas and Boutte and guys like that, and just spreading the ball around. It's gonna be nice weather, no kind of detrimental factors for this Patriots team. The only thing that maybe to their disadvantage, there's still no word on Gonzalez, as he's not practicing today, so that could be a knock for the defense. But if you put people like Harold Landry, Robert Spillane, Clavon Chasen, even Milton Williams. I mean, 4 of those dudes is just going to be ragdolling some of those Miami players on Sunday. So I like the Patriots to rough up the Dolphins. The Dolphins, have, to all intents and purposes, have no heart right now. They don't look like they're playing for one another. Tua look lost or disinterested or maybe both. And Tyreek just wants the ball, and he may be a player that's about to fall off a cliff production-wise, a la Antonio Brown.
He may be a player that has bigger troubles, given his off-field issues have resurfaced once more.
Yes, indeed, the man does like to play, but off the field as well. But to me, the Patriots they're a more cohesive unit. I think Vrabel's going to be, rubbing his hands at the prospect of roughing up the Dolphins. He's gonna march in there and he's gonna smell that weakness and smell that kind of that dysfunction that's going on down there. And I like the Patriots for at least a 7-point win on Sunday.
Brian?
The Dolphins had a player-only meeting this afternoon, which strikes me as these players are trying to win in spite of their head coach, and that's what I believe will happen on Sunday. I think the Dolphins players come out re-energized, want to prove a point. It's a Miami victory for me.
Oh, interesting. I thought I was the only one who's going to go against the grain. I think it's the same. I actually think the Dolphins will. It'll be one of those quizzical ones, and we'll scratch our heads. But a combination of the weather, players playing for pride, if not for McDaniel, and the fact that they just got better dudes, sees them through in this one. I still think it's going to be a dumpster fire of a season, but this is going to be one of those weird ones we'll look back at and say, oh, how did they win that one? Okay, 49ers Saints is next up. Saints, another one of those teams making a second home stand against the San Francisco team that comes in pretty banged up. Mac Jones starting in place of Brock Purdy. It's looking more like it could be a few weeks out for Purdy between shoulder and toe injuries. They've lost George Kittle as well to a hamstring injury. So 49ers, one of the most injured teams in the league last year, get no luck when it comes to the treatment room, or so it seems over recent years. Playing against arguably one of the worst teams in the league right now in the New Orleans Saints. I find it hard to get up for this game, let's be honest, because you're looking at Spencer Rattler starting for the Saints. You're looking at the backup quarterback starting for the 49ers. They're going to be, to a certain extent, in damage limitation mode. However, and we talked about it last week, and we mentioned into the offseason as something to look at from a 49ers perspective, Robert Saleh back as defensive coordinator is a big fillip for that San Francisco team. We already started to see it coalesce last week. I mean, let's face it, he's got some great chess pieces on the board there, and he knows how to deploy them. I think he's going to create havoc. I think whoever 49ers play with their backup quarterback, they're going to be in the game. I expect Kyle Shanahan to do some Kyle Shanahan magic and scheme up the right sort of stuff to give Mac Jones the best chance to succeed, and I think they will come out of there with a win. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I see the 49ers coming out of this one on the right side of it. Brian, sorry.
You're grand, Connor. Look, I don't see it very dissimilar to yourself. Like, when you see all the injuries over the course of the week, and in fairness to the Saints, and I think the Saints will play in the manner in which we saw last week over the course of the season. Like, they're not a complete shot team. They've got players like Kamara who in their own way can have really stellar days, and Olave. They've still got some players on defensively, but they are short at quarterback. And Spencer Rattler, for all his nice plays last weekend, had some harebrained plays as well. And I think that's what we're going to save him. I think the 49ers are actually falling into a nice situation here, because if it was any other team they were going up against in the league, maybe with the exception of the Giants right now, they probably would still find a way to, they'd be in a difficult spot with the injuries that they have. Like, to lose Kittle and Purdy in the first weekend of the season, like, there's bigger battles ahead. But I think you're right. I think they find a way to navigate victory here. They're not going to need all the players at the levels in which we'll probably see over the course of the season to get over the line in New Orleans. It's a scrappy one, but I think the 49ers are 2-0 come Sunday night.
Kieran?
Yeah, it's going to be the 49ers for me.
Shane?
Mac Jones playing for the 49ers. I'm going to back the Saints to win this game.
Kieran, we move on to our next game now, which is Bears at Lions. Both teams coming off losses in the first week in the NFC North, both to other divisional rivals. So we have quite a few NFC North games already being chalked off, even after 2 weeks of the season. Bears, of course, going down on Monday Night Football to the Vikings. Lions beaten quite well by the Packers on Sunday afternoon. How do you see this one breaking down?
Well, like you said, I mean, both had some pretty rough week ones. Probably the Bears more than anybody. I mean, that was a real tough way to go down. I mean, at home with all that expectation, that was really tough for the Bears. And they both got to pick themselves up because there's no other way right now. It's a come at you fast league. The Lions. I mean, I'll start with the Lions. I mean, I discussed it briefly, but 46 yards of rushing yards last week is pretty astounding when you got Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield, and I was startled by that. They're back up against Ben Johnson this week. Ben Johnson's going to be relishing this contest. I see a big return for Sonic and Knuckles at home. If it's the first home game, they've got to shake off that disappointment of the postseason from last year. And it's going to be a tough environment for the Bears to go into. The Bears expended a lot of energy against Minnesota, and they came up short. And they don't want to go 0-2 because any team going 0-2 at this stage, the alarm bells are ringing big. I think for me, it's going to be Detroit just kind of reverting to the norm. There's been so much talk of are they going to be affected by the loss of the two coaches? They lost two stalwarts on the O-line. Are these things going to mount up for them? And I'm on the record plenty of times saying I don't think it's going to matter. I think they've got too many, too many solid people in the back room with the backroom staff, not just in the sidelines, but the backroom staff. I think they're able to absorb all these hits, and they still have, the premium players like Jameson Williams and Sonic and Knuckles, and they've got Adrian Hutchinson backfield as well, which is a massive boost. I think all of those kind of factors are going to be too much for the Bears. I believe in the power of this Lions team. I think they've got too much for probably 70%, 80% of the league right now. And I think the Bears are going to be in a real tough spot going up against them. Notwithstanding, Williams was so-so, 21 to 35 for 210. He did take a couple of sacks. He kind of was reverting back to that scrambled college USC kind of mode that he was in and making some questionable throws and questionable plays. But, the offense wasn't terrible. Swift, Moore, they put up some decent numbers. So they'll be competitive, but I think that we're gonna get into like October, November, and people will forget all about the Lions' first game when they're 7-1, 8-1, and they're just powering along. So, for me, this motor of the Lions is going to be too much for the Bears. I think the line is 5.5 right now. Probably come to 7 by Sunday, and that's probably about where it's going to land. I'll take the Lions.
Yeah, I see it tighter than that. I do still see the Lions winning, and we've talked about the departure of the two coordinators, and given the quality of the two people you're talking about there, and Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, there was obviously going to be an adjustment factor. I think you're also judging the Lions against a very high yardstick naturally because they put up 15 wins last year. I don't think it was ever going to be that was on the cards this year. Packers have gotten a lot better. I had tipped them even before Micah Parsons was traded there to win the NFC North as it was. I think they showed us last week what they're capable of. Let's see if they can keep that up for the whole season. But when it comes to the Lions, to paraphrase the great Detroit fan, Eminem, y'all act like you never seen Dan Campbell before. Like the culture that's in this team, the quality that's in this team, the caliber of players that are in this team, they're more than enough for pretty much any unit they're going to face this year to handle. We'll see what happens when it comes to the playoffs. I was very down on Caleb after the game last week and prepared to go into hibernation, Bears fan like after week one. I spent an hour watching Kurt Warner's breakdown on Study Ball. He looked at Caleb this week, and it's interesting because one thing that perhaps I wasn't given enough credit for is that Vikings defense is so good. I mean, you're looking at so many plays where I'm calling out Caleb and getting frustrated and about to throw stuff at the TV, but there actually is no one open. He had a lot of bad options on a lot of those plays, and some of the scrambles, which ended up in negative plays, were probably his best option. Okay, he can let go of the ball a little bit quicker. I think he needs to trust his receivers a little bit more. Still got that slight college football mindset. Still picked up a couple of bad habits from last season. But like you, Kieran, I think the weapons are there. I think the O-line has definitely showed signs of improvement. It wasn't perfect last week. I trust the Bears defense, and I think they'll get better under Dennis Allen as the season goes ahead. Saw some promising signs there last week. Goff took 4 sacks against the Packers. Bears unit not quite at that level, certainly not across the front four. So I don't think he's going to be quite harassed to the same degree. But I do think they will make some hay. And I also think that Lions defense isn't going to be able to be up to the Bears offense. And let's remember that it's being coached by Ben Johnson, who knows exactly what he's looking at when he comes to Ford Field. I think that's a factor here. Bears have dropped 5 of their last 6 against the Lions. I mean, the Bears have only won one divisional game over the past 2 seasons and counting. But they tend to play the Lions close. These two teams tend to play, slobber knockers between the two of them. There's never much between them. I think the line is a little bit generous to the Lions, but I still think, unfortunately, from a Bears perspective, they're going to come out the wrong side of it. It's Detroit for me. Brian.
I said on Monday I thought the Giants were in a bad spot, and I think the Bears are in a bad spot. But yeah, in both games I do agree with you, Connor. I think the Bears will play up in this game. I think obviously the nature of Monday's defeat will mean the significance of another divisional game they'll have to play up. But ultimately, I think they'll come up short because I don't know if they can live with the Lions in terms of what the Lions could potentially do offensively. And I think come Monday evening, we'll all be here because with me selecting Miami means everybody on this screen will be waiting another week to find their team in the victory chart.
Shane.
I changed my mind in this game about 10 times this week, but when I saw that everybody else in the team went for the Lions, I said I might as well just back the Bears. But simply because the Lions are either going to come out fighting and get all of the anger from their bad performance on the Packers and just unleash it on the Bears, or come out and show that actually that the problems in their coaching is going to take a couple of weeks to fix. So I'm going to give it to the Bears, but I'm not fully convinced on it.
All right, we move into the first game of the 9 p.m. window, which is Broncos visiting Indianapolis to play the Colts off that very impressive and handsome victory over the Dolphins at the weekend. Brian, Danny Dimes, does he continue to show this majestic turnaround in the renaissance of his career since he left New York? This year, Saquon.
Absolutely, Connor. I think this is all prime for a big Daniel Jones performance, and here we are next week. And maybe Brian Dable will be fired because of Daniel Jones, and not because of what's happening in house. Because maybe Daniel Jones goes off and has this fantastic season, and the questions are, how could you not get this out of that player? Tongue in cheek. I think he's up against a much stronger team defensively this weekend. Let's be fair, the Broncos weren't great shakes last weekend. They did what they had to do, but defensively, they are a different animal. And what we saw over the course of the offseason in terms of bringing in players, but not just players of any stature, players that have played in the Super Bowl, players that understand the nature of what the Broncos are looking to achieve in finally securing the AFC West. I think Daniel Jones will probably have a decent enough game. I think the Colts will be well in it. I think the line 2.5 points, but QuinnBet reflects how tricky this one is for the Broncos to go across and play in Indianapolis. But ultimately, I think we might see a breakout game from Bo Nix this week because the offense for the Broncos started for large parts last weekend. They didn't look like they even knew what the play call was at the time. Running backs were running off in different positions than what was expected of them. I think Bo Nix comes out firing this weekend, a high-scoring affair. But I think the Broncos are the team ultimately that are primed to really challenge this year within that division. I don't think the Colts are. I'll go Broncos.
Shane, who wins the battle of the horses? Is it the frisky Colts or the Bucking Broncos?
I do like the little rivalries that come up in the NFL every now and again. I think it's an interesting one because the test for the Colts now is how much of last week was really the Colts playing well and how much last week was the Dolphins playing bad. For me, though, I think the Broncos will be the ones that actually set the tone of this game. Bo Nix was 2 of 14 on third down last week. He did throw 2 interceptions as well. I think he attempted 40 passes and still managed to only get 176 yards. I don't think that fixes itself in a week, even with, Kieran alluded to earlier that, or alluded to in a Monday show, I think that there was a lot of it felt there was a preseason week 4 type feel to a lot of teams last week. It felt like Denver was one of those teams. The Denver Titans game was definitely one of those games, but I don't know. I still think there's a bit more work until they really get into full speed. In the same way that, CJ Stroud struggled for parts of his second year, the same way that the Bengals always seem to struggle in September. I think the Broncos might be finding themselves in a similar predicament right now, that they just need to get a couple of things going before they really push forward. Plus, on the Daniel Jones side of things, I think he's going to be amazing by the time we get to Thanksgiving? No, but I'm going to give him at least another week of some pretty solid play. He's got Pittman Jr. is looking good. Tyler Warner had a very good first game in the league last year. And as well as that, Indianapolis are one of the better teams at getting good quarterback pressure. They managed to cause a fumble against Miami. I think they will keep Bo Nix fairly contained compared to even what Tennessee put up to them last week. And Tennessee did a relatively good job considering they had to go into Denver. It was penalties that killed them, really. And I don't see the Colts being so ill-disciplined to give the Broncos momentum in this one. So I'm going for the Colts to win this match.
I'm laughing at Rory saying in the comments there that he had to Google slobber knocker after I used it to describe the matchup between the Bears and the Lions. A perfectly innocent phrase, I have to say. So no fear Googling that one. It just means a closely fought contest. It's a boxing related phrase from back in the midst of time. I got Colts on this one. Kieran.
Dre Greenlaw, Talu Fanga, Nick Benito, Pat Surtain, Daniel Jones will be knocked from pillar to post on Sunday. Give me the Colts. I mean the Broncos.
Sorry, did I say Colts? I meant Broncos as well. See, the horses, it's so confusing. I confuse myself. Right, we move to Panthers, Cardinals, Arizona's first home game, Kieran. They're off to a decent start. Will it continue?
If you listen to Bill Simmons' podcast, he describes some of these games as the poofecta. This is probably one of those poofecta games. Two teams that I'm not huge fans of. Bryce Young and Jack.
Don't Google that one, Rory. Don't anyone Google
the old poofectas. Yeah, I mean Bryce Young in Jacksonville last week was similar to the 2023 Bryce Young. I thought we turned a corner, but I was a little discouraged by his performance there. I think it was one of those where he kind of regressed against a team that was really up for it. It was tough for him to do anything with that Jacksonville team. And Kyler, I'm on the record saying I'm not a fan of Kyler Murray. I don't believe he's a leader of men. I don't believe he's a quality quarterback. I don't think his heart is fully in it. And I don't think his teammates think that either. But for this game, I'm going to take the Cardinals at home because I think the Panthers, while I do think they're going to have a better season than last year, I just think the fact that the Cardinals are at home, Kyler was 21 of 29 last week with 2 touchdowns. The Panthers just couldn't get anything going last week. I do like some of their weapons. Ted McMillan obviously is he's going to be a real star in the league, and Leggett and Hunter Renfrow is back there. But I just think that the run game is going to work for Arizona. I just think there's going to be too much for him for this Panthers defense. I think Bryce is going to try to work this secondary. What's his name? Kyler's going to try to work that secondary of the Panthers, and I think it's just going to be. It's not going to be a pretty game. There's going to be a lot of drops, a lot of penalties, but it's going to be one of those kind of 18-10 kind of games. But I think ultimately the Cardinals are going to come out on top of this one.
Brian,
I'm a lot more higher on the Cardinals than many people here are, and other people in which you listen to. I think they kind of are turning a corner where they're finding ways to win these games that you would see in the past they lose. And in this instance, I do think they find a way to win this game quite comfortably. They've got some good players in offense. McBride, Murray in his own right, and of course the wide receiver ones of Harrison. It's a Cardinals win. It's a strong Cardinals win for me. 2-0 Cardinals.
Shane, what's your analysis?
I can't believe by the end of this week that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be 2-0, but I guess similar to some other teams in the NFC West, that's just the nature of their schedule to play some easier to beat teams. I think the big thing is, like, if we look at some of the key matchups here, Ted McMillan, I think, ended up being the most productive part of the Panthers offense, which is unusual for a rookie to have to do that. I think Leisha was making the point in the comments there that the loss of Adam Thielen, I think, is going to be a big one for Carolina to get over in the first couple of weeks. You look at on the flip side of that, look at what the Cardinals could do in the secondary, and in particular, Will Johnson, I think, ended up being the highest grade rookie defender per PFF in week 1. He's the kind of person that I think a part of the overall Cardinals game plan might be able to get a couple of turnovers, and turnovers will be key because even though Bryce Young doesn't necessarily always take a lot of sacks, if you put him under pressure, he doesn't throw accurate balls, and sometimes he puts it in places where he can be picked off quite easily. So I don't think the Cardinals offense drives a victory here. I think the Cardinals defense manages to get a couple of key turnovers, maybe a defensive score, and the Cards find a way to win this one.
Yeah, it's Cards for me as well. Let's take a quick break.
Great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
We have a Super Bowl rematch in the 9 p.m. window this weekend as well, because the Eagles travel to Gaya Fields to take on the Chiefs, looking to avenge their loss, of course, in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Brian, will they get that vengeance?
I would like to see it, Connor. Do I think it's going to happen? No. It's very rare I go against the Chiefs. I find myself always falling into the trap of selecting the Chiefs at home in particular, even during the regular season when they've lost big games, such as when they've lost to the Bills. Even the Ravens last year nearly beat them. But this Eagles team, we just saw it last weekend. Like, it wasn't fantastic. They were ill-disciplined in the first half, and yet they still found a way to win a game in which the Cowboys really should have won. The Cowboys played at a really strong level. The Eagles played off their game, and by the halftime, they were up. Saquon Barkley had got his touchdown. Jalen Hurts had scored 2 touchdowns. Does this Chiefs defense, can they do enough to right the wrongs of last February and keep Jalen Hurts in check? I just don't see it. As good as Steve Spagnuolo is in scheming, and I know he'd be scheming all summer around. They would have looked at that Super Bowl and the previous affairs when they played against each other and trying to navigate. And even if they do, can this Chiefs offense right now do what we need to see from them in terms of getting out there, getting the lead early, consistent drives, keep the Eagles offense off the field? I'm not entirely sure they can. Their run game looked static last weekend. They're using players that have been third string, fourth string wide receivers. Wardy's out. Rice is suspended. Kelsey, and it comes up with flash plays, but the consistency's gone. Noah Gray was stepping in last year. We didn't see much out of him. I just don't know whether we're going to see a Chiefs team. Look, we could be completely wrong. It could be a huge rebound game for them. And maybe this was exactly what they need so early in the season. But for me, I think there's only one team right now that's trending to be back in the Super Bowl, and it's not the Chiefs. I know it's very early in the season, but we didn't see a lot from them last week. I'm going to side with the Eagles to go in there and win. And they have done that in the past. They won on a Monday Night Football 2 years ago. So we're not opposed to seeing this. It's an Eagles victory for me on Sunday. And it really sets the marker in the AFC that this team is the team to beat.
Can we make a quick point before I talk about this game? Sunday Night Football, Falcons at Vikings, Bucks at Texans, Chargers at Raiders, and we're watching Eagles and Chiefs relegated to the 9 p.m. window. What happened there? I know a man who's going to be happy with how we're going to predict this one, and let's hope it follows through from his perspective, is Kieran O'Reilly at the Tap House, our new partner. And make sure to check out Tap House Red Zone at the Tap House in Ranelagh. It's a beautiful setup, lovely place to watch football of a Sunday evening. Myself and Shane were there last week for the first Red Zone of the season. Great food. We got the little table tents there. Tap House Red Zone in association with the Irish NFL show. Lots more to come from our partnership there. Keep tuned to our socials, and we'll let you know what's happening there in terms of watch parties. We have a watch party in week 3. We'll give you full details of that, and plenty more games and giveaways, and good crack, and just a great place to watch a game at the Tap House in Ranelagh. But Kieran O'Reilly, I know, is a big Eagles fan, and like yourself, Brian, I can't see the Eagles going here without coming out 2-0, which would drop Patrick Mahomes, interestingly, for the first time in his career, if it does come to pass, to 0-2. He's never started a season 0-2. Another trend in their favor, I don't know if you can call it a trend so much as it's just a statistical quirk, is that the Super Bowl winner is 7-2 in rematches when a rematch with the team that they played in the Super Bowl comes up the following season. I just think, as much as we saw from Mahomes last week, you really didn't see enough from the Chiefs. The Eagles, I thought, were a little bit lackluster against the Cowboys, and would be concerned a little bit about that Eagles secondary, or at least Adoree Jackson, who got absolutely torched by CeeDee Lamb, and it could have got even worse if Lamb hadn't had a couple of drops. I do think that with Jalen Carter back in the lineup after his own slobber knocker, having spat at Dak Prescott last week, which the NFL decided was the suspension served effectively because he was ejected from the game before it started and never got to play. He's a force. That's something that the Eagles O-line is going to have to contend with. Hollywood Brown was a bright spot for that Chiefs offense, 99 yards. You kind of forgot about Kelsey for most of the game until that 47-yard touchdown. And I do think that's something that we will see from the Chiefs this season. I'm not writing them off. This is just probably too much of a matchup for them right now, but they are absolute dogs. I mean, they just know how to win, and I think they will win enough games to get to the playoffs. So we'll still be looking at the Chiefs in January, wondering, is this going to be yet another procession to a Super Bowl for them? But I don't think it's going to be anything like the route that they had last year, where they were out the right side of all of these one-score games and where they compiled those 15 wins and got the number 1 seed. It's not going to be like that. I think this is going to be much tougher, and I think the Eagles are just starting the season as they mean to go on. They're standing on business, and they'll come out of this one. I'm not going to say it's going to be too comfortably, but I think they will win. Shane?
The first thing to say is we can all expect the Chiefs to be better than they were last week. I think the Brazil game does kill certain aspects of certain teams, and I think the Chiefs will probably fall into that category. The big thing for me, I think, is mentality, because last year during the build to the Super Bowl, what struck me is the fact that the Chiefs were very hyped and very in their own head about the game. It was about the aura. It was about getting on stage and building up, make sure the whole world knew they were there. And the Eagles were quiet, focus on the task, shut up, get the job done. And I think that the fact that the Chiefs have spent the whole summer stewing on this mean that they're thinking so much. They want to get revenge on on so many different aspects of the Eagles. They want to try and hit Jalen Hurts as much as they can, whatever. I think that actually will go against the mentality, and that they will build themselves so much up that they're putting themselves to fall again. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is the only person there who can probably use the revenge arc as being a real driving force and to make it work to the best of his ability. But what about the rest of the team? Does the defense come up with key stops? Does the offensive line protect them in the way that they definitely did not against the Eagles when they played against each other in February? The Eagles, I think, will just come into this with more clinical thinking and will show themselves to just be a better roster from top to bottom that will manage to find a way to win this key game. A key game, which, by the way, Fox were the ones who put their elbows out. I think that's the reason why we get to watch this one on 9:25, and thank God that we can watch this on Red Zone and on our own screens. This is the match of the week, guys. So if anybody wants to get out of the house and go to a friend's or a bar anywhere else around the world to watch a game, this is definitely the one to leave to watch. This is going to be a cracker. I think a lot of scores here, but the Eagles for me are going to come in with a winning mentality and will win.
Kieran?
I mean, I still have faith in this Chiefs team. I mean, they went 12-0 in one-score games last year. Listen, another 0-1 in a tight game this year, but it's still the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs at home. I mean, I know that they still have Hollywood Brown, they still have Travis Kelce, they still have Pacheco, Kareem Hunt. They still have weapons. It's not like they're out there with nothing. And I just have a feeling that the Chiefs are going to pull off one of those famous wins. Harrison Butker is going to be a factor. I just think the Chiefs, they've just been there so many times. I mean, we saw, I brought it up in the past, what happened when Brady beat him in the Super Bowl and what happened to Mahomes. Just remember that little shoulder charge he gave that DB in Brazil last week. I mean, he's broiling underneath. He's just seething after being embarrassed in February. And I just have a feeling the Chiefs are going to pull out the victory.
Okay, we move on to Sunday Night Football, where the Falcons take on the Vikings. And Shane, I know I slightly dissed this game because it's not Eagles-Chiefs, but it is an exciting matchup. We got two exciting young quarterbacks. JJ McCarthy, after winning on his NFL debut, having sat out last year, obviously injured. Michael Penix, hell of an arm, and can do really interesting things.
Rematch of the 2023-24 college football national championship game, of course, between Michigan and Washington, for anybody who stayed up to watch that one. Interesting one last year that Penix ended up having double the amount of yards that JJ McCarthy did. Plus, Penix managed to rush in for, was it 2 touchdowns as well? I think he proved himself to be a quite a remarkable individual. But the Vikings won their game because I think they were a remarkable team. I don't think we're going to find something similar to be playing out here. We have to remember that Minnesota home advantage is one of the more significant in the league. The Falcons, I think, is similar to what we've been saying. They aren't good game managers. And last week against the Bucs, that's an opponent where they've had the number. That's an opponent that they know. That's an opponent they should be beating. We had so many key aspects of what it takes to win football games. It did not go their way, even if Penix had a good game. Bijan Robinson had a good game. And JJ McCarthy, of course, let's not forget, last week was not facing Chicago's first choice corners.
It's Bijan Robinson.
Excuse me, Bijan Robinson. But I have to remember that JJ McCarthy was not facing the Chicago's top, first choice corners, and still really, really struggled in that first half. But can we expect what we saw in the second half to be more reflective of what we can see from JJ McCarthy this week? I think so. I think the Vikings can really hit the ground running. And I have to remember as well that the Vikings defense held Caleb to 6 yards per attempt last week. I think they have the right mix to put Penix under pressure. And that passing game from the Falcons, I don't know if it's going to get anywhere near as much room as it did against the Buccaneers last week. So for that reason, I think the Vikings are going to find a way to win this one.
Brian, as Leisha points out in the comments, it would be kind of nice to see both the Vikings and the Steelers arriving in Dublin in week 4 in top form. Do you think that the Vikings will continue to be unbeaten this week?
Yeah, I do, and I'm kind of siding with the narrative which Shane has described there, which is that the Vikings defense in large parts finds a way to do the damage on Penix and co. This Vikings defense was severely underrated for large parts of last season, which probably kind of lent his hand in terms of why they did win 14 games over the course of the season. That Sam Darnold and the others got all the plaudits, but the defense on the Flores was fantastic, and it's starting off in the manner in which we saw. I know we touched on it. Caleb Williams had the bright spots in the game, but over the course of the game, as you touched on, how strong was that defense? And in a Sunday night football opening home game of the season, JJ McCarthy's been getting all the plaudits since Monday Night Football, but he didn't show up for 3 quarters. It was the 4th quarter, and all of a sudden the other 3 quarters have been forgotten. I think we might see a more composed performance from him in his home debut, but ultimately I think it will come down to whether this Falcons offense can do enough, and I think they will do enough in in parts of the game, but ultimately come fourth quarter, I think the Vikings defense finds a way to navigate the victory. I'm going to go Vikings to win. I don't think it'll be a high scoring affair. I think it'll be actually one of the lower scoring games of the weekends, which people won't expect. I think they're all going to expect a big kind of shootout, and I don't think that will materialize. I think the Vikings win a tight one.
Yeah, I think you're on the money there. I wouldn't be saying it's a slam dunk for Minnesota, but I do think the Vikings will win. Kieran?
Yeah, I actually think they'll win fairly comfortably against the Jets of the South. I think I just think that the way McCarthy was just turning towards the end of that game and the plaudits and just the high he'll get off of that game, and that's not even talking about the Vikings defense. I think they're going to give Penix a terrible time. Yeah, let's give me the Vikings.
Yeah, I'd enjoy the Jets of the South a lot more if the Bears weren't the Jets of the North. It's just it depresses me because it reminds me too much of my own fandom. Right, let's move to Monday Night Football, where the Bucs take on the Texans. Kieran, Texans coming off a 9-point putrid offensive outing against the Rams, where CJ Stroud was all kinds of frustrated and also again all kinds of harassed. Can it get any better this week against Tampa Bay?
Ooh, I don't know, Vita Vea and Levante David and people like that. Yeah, it was tough going for Houston and for Stroud. Again, he's missing some of those key weapons. No sign of Mixon yet. And I think the Texans are trying to throw in those rookie wide receivers, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Not quite sure they're ready yet. So the offense is still kind of finding its feet. And we saw what the Bucs did. It's Baker. It's that offense. I mean, they've got a real star now in Egbuka. Even with Godwin being out, and I'm taking into account, Tristan Wirfs not being healthy. I don't think it's going to make that huge of a difference against Houston right now. I still like Houston to have a decent season, but this is going to be a real tough game for them. Even though Houston are at home, I just think Baker rolling in there with the weapons that he has, on top of Vita Vea, on top of some of those guys they have on defense, I think it's going to be an 0-2 start for Houston. They're still finding their way, and I'll take Baker and the Bucs in a win for this one.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm going to go slightly against the rain here. I'm going to pick the Texans to make a home stand here. I think this is one of those revert to the mean, which goes in the Texans' favor. I also noted the Bucs gave up a hell of a lot of offense last week against Penix and the Falcons. I'm not going to say the Texans are going to have their way with the Bucs, but I do think they'll get a lot more going than they did against a really mean Rams defense. Texans playing at home, their own defensive unit, one of the best in the league, and probably slightly overshadowed last weekend because their offense was so poor. But I think they can give Baker a tough time. I think they will give Baker a tough time. I like what I've seen from the Bucs. I think this could be actually one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. Mika Egbuka looked really good with that 2 TD debut for the Bucs last week. But I think the Texans will actually make a home stand. Shane?
I'm also going for the Texans. Am I convinced on it? No, but I think the main reason is that I think they'll be able to shut down Egbuka and a couple of other wide receivers better defensively. I think this will be a defensive win for the Texans, and CJ Stroud and his offense might struggle a bit, but no, I'm going for the Texans to win this one.
Brian?
A midnight kickoff, Connor, which isn't too bad for us Irish people over here watching that game with the doubleheader on Monday. I'm very surprised that the Texans are favourites in this. I thought, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but ultimately I think the Bucs are too strong. I think the Bucs are dark horse for the season. I think they win on Monday Night Football.
And finally, with Monday Night Football, we round up with an AFC West rivalry game between the Chargers and the Raiders in Vegas. Brian, both teams coming off wins in week one. Two teams enter, but only one team will leave 2-0. Who will it be?
It's the Raiders for me, Connor. It's probably the surprise of the weekend. Look, I love this one. I wish this was on a different time. 3 a.m. I think Leisha's just touched on it there. Not a fan. So have your team kicking off at 3 o'clock in the morning, Irish team. Like that's just shocking. But I get the nature of why that'd be on. What's that for you? That's a 10 o'clock kickoff for you, Kieran?
10 p.m. 10
that
might be too late for me.
Snooze fest at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Look, Pete Carroll against Harbour, it has all the merits of a fantastic occasion. And something strikes me that this Raiders team are a little bit better than everyone gives them credit for. Pete Carroll, he's an X factor as a head coach. We saw it last weekend. A lot of people were selecting the Patriots, and I think he navigates it. Okay, that's true. Yeah, okay, we'll give you that one. Well, you had a very successful week. What were you, 14-2? I made a show of myself, so I'll probably make a show of myself with this particular selection. I'm going to go with the Raiders to upset the odds here. Chargers fans are charging, but they have a tendency to drop games that they least expect at the most inappropriate time. I think the Raiders will remain unbeaten and win the clash in the AFC West.
Shane, will the Chargers charger or will it be Viva Las Vegas?
It would be the most Chargers thing to go down to Brazil, beat the Chiefs, and then bottle it against the Raiders. But I don't think that's going to happen this time. I just think that the Chargers all around look like a stronger team. If the Chargers are going to Charger, I'm waiting for them to do it in December. By the way, 10 o'clock Eastern kickoff. That's some NBA level stuff. We're not watching the Lakers here. This is the National Football League. That's a disgrace. But anyway, that's mini rant over, as if I actually live in the time zone, which of course I don't. But yeah, I'm giving the Chargers a win there.
All right, I'm going to give it to the Chargers too. And that brings us to the end of our week 2 picks. Thanks for keeping it with us here on the Irish NFL Show.